Ladies and gentlemen, this is El Cochino, Tom Lawler, and I'd like to welcome you to the podcast that puts the lotion on its own skin, LuchaWorld. Bitchin'.
Welcome everyone to LuchaWorld Podcast episode number 132. Fredo Esparza here, and this week we are going to talk about the upcoming Triplemania 30 show from Monterrey. This would be the first Triplemania of this year and celebrating AAA's 30th anniversary. They're going to have 3 events, big events, of course, them being Triplemanias. This one has a lot of outside talent coming in, and also the beginning of the big mask Ruleta de la Muerte tournament will be on this show. So we'll be talking about that. We will also be talking about AAA and WrestleCon in Dallas, Texas this weekend. Just give a quick rundown on some of the matches that will be on that show. It looks, honestly, I kind of think the WrestleCon AAA show might look better than the actual Triplemania 30th show from Monterrey, just because there's a little bit, it kind of feels like there's a little bit more, I don't know, it's not as, there's not as many matches that are possibly going to be really bad that you might see on Triplemania, and also there's some really questionable matches that they came up with for that show. We'll also be talking about CMLL celebrating the Homenaje Dos Leyendas shows over the last weekend, which included, actually not over the last weekend, back in, what was it, March 18th, along with the following ones in Guadalajara and Puebla. Not a lot happened in Guadalajara, Puebla ones, but they did honor a couple of past legends, Doral Dixon and Gran Cochis. The one in Mexico City, of course, honored Ringo Mendoza. I probably won't go too in detail about those guys. I think it'd be kind of interesting to do a podcast just covering those 3, along with some of the recent wrestlers that passed away. Might do that when Kurt comes back on the podcast. He's been wanting to do a podcast, but he's not available at the moment. Hopefully he will be available soon. But we'll be talking about the Dos Leyendas shows in CMLL. Also, some of the latest news out of CMLL that includes a lot of really them trying to fill out their championships with actual champions, as opposed to having so many titles vacant. But I think there's at least over 24 to 25 titles within the main CMLL group. Of course, you have, I think, a couple more in Guadalajara, and you also have some of the DF titles that are sometimes held by some of the CMLL guys, but we won't be talking about those titles. We'll be talking about the CMLL World, the World Historic, formerly the NWA World Historic, now just the World Historic, as well as the national titles and the Arena Coliseo Tag Team Championships. Why we don't have an Arena Coliseo, and I don't even want to say it and make it possibly bring it to life just by saying it on a podcast. But why do we not have more Arena Coliseo titles if they have the Arena Coliseo tag team titles? Which is weird, because that's really how it was, even going back to when these titles existed back in the 60s. They kind of disappeared for a stretch of time, and then they were brought back later in recent years. But really, you never had any other, you never had an Arena Coliseo champion, heavyweight champion, a singles champion. But we'll be talking about those titles, as well as some other news that's coming around from the independent scene. Not a lot, really, mostly because, honestly, everything moves so quickly that what was news one day suddenly just gets forgotten the following day, especially when it comes to title changes. But that's the main focus will really be the upcoming Triplemania 30th show, as well as just some thoughts on CMLL's recent run of shows, and the mystery of where is Atlantis Jr., which has still not been answered. We'll talk about that during the Dos Leyendas rundown. But before we get to CMLL, we will talk about AAA. And this weekend, they will be in Dallas, Texas for the WrestleCon event at the Fairmont Hotel. That is on March 31st, which happens to be I have to check the calendar. It happens to be on Thursday. Hopefully I upload this podcast before that. But The card looks pretty good. The main event, of course, being Psycho Clown versus Black Taurus. That is really an interesting main event. Really one of the, battle of hosses. That should be a fun match to keep an eye on. Just should be fun. The opening match is Taya, Niño Hamburguesa, and Microman going up against Rey Escorpión, Mini Abismo Negro, and La Hiedra. This is your trios version of the Relevos Atómicos de Locura, where they have a female teaming up with a male wrestler and a mini, or a micro in this case with Microman. I actually think that should be a very entertaining match, just because, first of all, you have Rey Escorpión on the heel side, and Mini Abismo Negro is pretty good. This is not the same Mini Abismo Negro. This is a different version. But this should be and then you also have really Niño Hamburguesa, Taya, and Microman are very popular, especially Microman being a big star. That should be a fun match. Obviously, you have some of these guys on this AAA show that are probably going to be working other shows throughout the week. So it might be a good thing that these guys are doing it on a Thursday. You might get them at their peak. Who knows how some of these guys will respond to wrestling over an entire weekend. Some of them might be a little bit worn out by the time some of the other shows come about. Not just because of wrestling, but just because of the travel and going to a different city and being around a lot of fans, being more of a social type of thing. Should be difficult, but this should be a fun opener to kick off that show. The second match is Octagon Jr. teaming up with Aramis and Mr. Iguana against Ares, Abismo Negro Jr. and Fabi Apache. Again, mixed trios match with Fabi involved. But Fabi is one of those female wrestlers that actually does really well against male opponents. And especially the guys of this size. Obviously, you're probably going to get a lot of comedy out of Mr. Iguana and Yeska. Which Mr. Iguana and Yeska were a bit of a controversy this past weekend during a Riot show. They did this I guess it's the Royal Rumble or Battle Royal that they do, and Yeska was announced as one of the participants, and one of the other wrestlers did spots with Yeska, and it became this big viral thing where some fans and wrestlers were offended that was killing Lucha Libre, while others just realized, it's just a comedy bit in not even like a main event. I think that's the one thing. If it was in a main event and it was a serious title match or something like that, I could see the people being offended. But, this was just a battle royal that it's just for fun. And I think it's not that. What's the harm in doing that? We've seen a lot of this stuff happen. It's weird because every time we talk about certain wrestlers, there's certain things happening in wrestling, and suddenly there's these guys who just have to be so negative about it. And I agree. I mean, don't get me wrong. I could see your point. Like, if you don't think this is good for pro wrestling, but I don't think you need to be completely. It doesn't have to ruin your whole view of professional wrestling or Lucha Libre, where, oh my God, this is killing professional wrestling or Lucha Libre, because it's not. There's other stuff that is killing the business. There's way worse stuff than this. I mean, we're seeing a lot of stuff. We've seen a lot of stuff that has actually done more damage to professional wrestling than Yeska being thrown off a balcony onto a group of luchadors who had to wait for that spot to happen. Comedy has always been a part of wrestling, and it always cracks me up because a lot of these guys who who are the first to talk how negative this is or it's killing the business, they'll have a gimmick that actually was at one point criticized for killing the business. LA Park, everybody knows him as a badass and a really good worker, but also the La Parka gimmick was a comedy gimmick. So it's the guy used to spend. He used to trios matches. How many times would you get the comedy bit where he would slap guys' asses and do all that stuff? And there's a lot of veterans who thought that was killing business at the time also. Same thing, look at Conan Big. Suddenly everybody's willing to work with him. After all those years of people talking about how he's killing the wrestling business, and he's the reason Lucha Libre died in Monterrey. it's not all his fault. There was other stuff that happened. It's cyclical. There's a lot of times it's just a cycle where wrestling just dies in certain territories or in certain places, and you just have to restart or you move on, and it's suddenly it pops up again. It's just part of the cycle. And to me, it's like I found that so annoying that they made a big deal about the whole Mr. Iguana Yeska thing. But in that match, you're gonna have him doing his comedy. Like of course he's gonna do comedy in that. But then you also have Octagon Jr., Aramis, Ares, Abismo Negro Jr., Fabio Apache. All of them are, you cannot deny that they're all really good workers. Same thing with Mr. Iguana. I think that's something that he gets overshadowed with because he does a lot of comedy, but that's pretty much what his character is. It's, for the most part, it's comedy, but he could still do certain things in the ring that, you can't really like put down. He's a good wrestler. It's just that he found his niche as doing a comedy gimmick. That's the thing. The third match is the Mecha Wolf and Bestia 666 defending the NWA World Tag Team titles against Aerostar and Drago. That should be a good match. Aerostar and Drago really, for the most part, teamed a lot in. They're still teaming up a lot on the like on indie shows, but it's been a while since they've been. I've seen them on AAA shows, as far as being kind of used in that form. But Lucha Underground, they were a tag team for several years and off and on there and in AAA. So I think that's going to be an excellent match. The fourth match is one of those really weird matches, but it's a no DQ match. And I think it's actually going to be a really fun match just because you're going to have the craziness of a wild brawl street fight that is Pagano. He's not afraid of throwing himself onto a table, with throwing himself into thumbtacks, throwing himself into fire. He's not afraid of doing any of those crazy things. He's teaming up with Drago Kid and Jack Cartwheel to go up against Sam Adonis, Puma King, and Gringo Loco. I think that should be a good match. Gringo Loco, a big upgrade over DMT Azul. I will say that, and I'm sure even Sam Adonis and Puma King would admit to that. Even though their frequent tag team partners, DMT Azul, Gringo Loco is a far better performer than DMT Azul. Plus, he's not as big of a headache as DMT Azul. The fifth match, Laredo Kid versus Bandito versus Flamita for the AAA World Cruiserweight title. That should be an excellent match. Bandito and Flamita have been feuding on the independent scene and also previously in Ring of Honor. So, adding that to this show as well as they're keeping it up everywhere. So I think that's kind of cool that's going to be part of it. And all three excellent performers. Really, that's one of those matches where you're really putting three, like, if you were to rank like best luchadors right now, probably three of the 10, 15 best luchadors right now in one match. That should be excellent. And then the main event, of course, Psycho Clown versus Black Taurus. That should be like I said, a Haas match as far as Lucha Libre goes. And overall, I think this is a really good show. This is probably like one of the few AAA shows that I actually think is really good top to bottom, because it doesn't have that feel of, there's going to be a clusterfuck or there's going to be something interference that's going to happen. I'm sure there's going to be interference on this show as well, because there's probably going to be other guys that are AAA affiliated that will be in Dallas over the weekend that could also be part of this. So I'm sure there's going to be some level of interference, but there's enough quality matches where I think this is probably going to be one of the better shows. Like if I was going to pay for a AAA show, if I was going to pay $20 for a AAA show, that would be the one show I would probably pay for. I'm not so sure about Triplemania 30. Like, it's not really my cup of tea, the lineup that they came up with. This is a good segue, like, just based off the fact that this, I just don't feel it's like it's not really a Lucha Libre show to me. It kind of feels like it's a mix, like it's going to bring in fans who are more nostalgic because of the whole Ruleta de la Muerte matchups. Psycho Clown versus Canek is probably going to draw a lot of the old Lucha Libre fans, the ones that are kind of like the ones that they call the Las Viudas del Toreo, for Canek, rooting for Canek, thinking he could win once more, which I think he might, just because you'd rather have Psycho Clown continue on in this tournament than Canek, as far as match quality goes. And you also have the other matches like LA Park versus Viano 4, Ultimo Dragon versus Pentagon Jr. And all those matches Blue Demon Jr. versus Riley. All four of those Ruleta de la Muerte matches, are very nostalgic. So I think that's going to attract those fans. But then you're also going to attract like the non-AAA fans, like, the AEW fan base. Maybe some of them, maybe some of the Impact fans, maybe some of the more of the US type fans who are more into like the guys who are coming in. So I kind of feel that's more what they're going with, a mix, as well as like the casual AAA fans. I think like if you're a hardcore Lucha Libre fan and you see this lineup, you might be like, like I'm not really that into feeling that show. You might not want to watch it. I don't even know, because I think even like they have like, if you look up and down the card, they have some good wrestlers on some of the non-Ruleta de la Muerte matches, but it's like they just like they mixed it up a lot. Like they have a lot of mixed tags and mixed people in matches. So it's like, I don't know, it doesn't come across that as strong of a show as I would hope. But I think it's going to get enough of a crowd though. There's going to be enough interest. And that's what I say. You can't cater your product to somebody who writes about Lucha Libre, who maybe like has been around for a long stretch of time, who's more of a, and I don't even consider myself a traditionalist. I enjoy good shows, but like it has to be like a really good Lucha Libre show, and that fits kind of like what I think is Lucha Libre. And, maybe what I think is Lucha Libre isn't what other people might think it is, but I kind of feel like I'm even more forgiving as far as like, because I'm okay with mixed tag matches, intergender matches. I like matches with a lot of high spots. I go to PWG shows often, every so often. So with indie shows, I'm a little more relaxed as far as being traditional. Like I'm not just like, oh, it has to be, a CMLL type of show. I'm okay with it being. In fact, I'm not even that. There's people who are traditional who would probably say I'm not even traditionalist, because I don't really like. There's a certain style like that I like, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be that whole top to bottom, that type of show. It just has to be something that I just find entertaining. I just like to be entertained. I don't really, and the thing for me is that this show has a lot of matches that I'm just not really feeling. It's a weird combination, just because it's like you would think I would be cool with like watching the legends, but you already know those legends, like the Ruleta de la Muerte matches are going to be dreadful to watch for the most part. I would be shocked if anything looked good. The Triplemania 30th will kick off, of course. Actually, it will have 10 matches on it. So, and interesting enough, there was a lot of the AAA guys aren't really listed on the show. So for the most part, I'm guessing they're going to be in that Copa Triplemania 30 lumberjack match, as well as probably going to be interfering in up and down the card, just because that's AAA. That's the way it's always been. They always love to have a lot of stuff going on their shows. The opening match will be a Marvel Lucha Libre match. It'd be kind of interesting if it ended up being like Hijo de Kingo working the opener again. And then there's the other issue, like Hijo de Kingo is scheduled for the show. He's not scheduled for Dallas. I think he's scheduled for a few other independent dates in Mexico, but he's still recovering from his injury, and I think he was supposed to be out 3 weeks, and it would be about 2 more weeks from what I recall, or 1 week at least. So it's like, I don't know if he's gonna be I don't know, like hopefully he'll be healthy by that point, because working on an injury, a lot of times a lot of the wrestlers, when they work through an injury, they end up suffering another injury, or it just keeps getting progressively worse. Hopefully he'll be okay by then. But the opening match, of course, being the Marvel Lucha Libre match, that will be then followed by Copa Triplemania 30, it'll be a lumberjack match. Basically, I would assume whoever's not listed on the rest of the card will probably be in that Copa Triplemania, along with probably a few surprises, maybe some past AAA stars showing up. That should be something. I don't expect much from it, but it might not be the worst Copa Triplemania as far as just because there's so many other matches that have a chance to be really bad on this card. That is then followed by the first of the Ruleta de la Muerte matches, which will be Ultimo Dragon versus Pentagon Jr. That should be interesting, just because there's a big it's been a while since we've seen Ultimo Dragon in Mexico. I mean, I can't recall I know he's wrestled on Toriyamon shows, but it's been a while since we've seen him like on a AAA or CMLL show. So it should be interesting to see what he has, how much gas he still has left in the tank. especially going up against Pentagon Jr. But for the most part, I think that should be an okay match, not something that's going to be horrible, but worst case, it'll just be an okay match that, just someone advances to the next round of the Ruleta de la Muerte mask tournament. The fourth match will be Tay Conti and Sammy Guevara going up against Sexy Star 2 and Octagon Jr., as well as Maravilla and Latigo. That should be a good match. The people involved in that have been pretty good. I think the funny thing is that AAA never refers to Sexy Star as Sexy Star 2. So every time they mention Sexy Star, everybody starts talking about, hope she doesn't hurt one of the women. Hopefully she doesn't hurt Tay Conti in this match, or, or how could they have her working this show? Stuff like that. Very, wag of the finger type of response at the thought of using Sexy Star. And, honestly, you would think they would kind of like just, put something that made it known that it's not Dulce Garcia or whatever the heck Sexy Star's name is now. Sexy Dulce. It's, just right, Sexy Star 2. Same thing with like Tito Santana. Every time somebody does the whole Poder del Norte thing and they mention Tito Santana, they're like, is that the Tito Santana from WWE? It's like, no, dude. This guy's he looks nothing like him. And it's like 2022. I mean, you really think Tito Santana, the first guy, would be in working a prominent trio in AAA in 2022? I shouldn't even say that because it's possible. We've seen crazier things happen in pro wrestling. The fifth match will be LA Park versus Vienna in the Ruleta de la Muerte mass tournament. Again, LA Park's good. They'll probably keep it as a brawl, but last time the Vienna was on a Triplemania, it did not end well. It got a lot of bad publicity as one of the worst matches in Triplemania history. So we might actually, I don't think it'll be the worst Triplemania match because obviously it's just a singles match and it's LA Park. Might be something kept short, and it might be something that's bad, but it won't be like the worst thing that we'll ever see on a Triplemania event. The sixth match on the card will be Dragon Lee and Dralistico going up against Johnny Superstar and Taurus and Laredo Kid, who will be teaming with a surprise luchador. Who knows who it will be? Could be somebody new, could be somebody from AAA, could be somebody coming in from AEW or Impact. We do not know. But that should be a good match. I mean, for the most part, you got some talented workers in the match, and you also, Dralistico, basically, we know what he does. He keeps it to, if he keeps it just to doing his big dives and limits what he's they limit what he's gonna do, I mean, it'll be perfectly fine. That will be followed by the seventh match, which is Blue Demon Jr. versus Rayo de Jalisco Jr. in a Ruleta de la Muerte mask tournament match. That will probably be really bad, but I also expect that to have a lot of interference in it, just because some of the names not included on the show are like DMT Azul, who you could always build up a rivalry between him and Blue Demon Jr. And then you also have Rayo de Jalisco Jr. Being there. You could always bring in NGD to go after him. So there could be a lot of interference. The rest of La Empresa, maybe a few other people. I could see that being a very interference-heavy match, and that also determining who advances, who loses and advances into the next round. After that, we get the eighth match, which is probably, like, of all the matches, this is probably the weirdest match out of the entire Triplemania 30th card from Monterrey. Pagano will be teaming up with Bandito and Taya to go up against Andrade El Idolo, Cibernetico, and Diana Purrazzo. I think they're trying to get like all these three people that could possibly have singles matches in future Triplemanias, upcoming Triplemanias. Like, I could totally see Pagano and Cibernetico being a match that they want to do at some point on a AAA show. I could see obviously Taya versus Diana is probably something that they're planning on doing on one of the upcoming Triplemania shows. And then there's also a possible Bandito versus Andrade El Idolo type of match on a future Triplemania show. Or, even Andrade versus Pagano and Bandito versus Cibernetico. You go either way. But still, like as a trios match, it's just so weird to see that. I think that's the thing. I kind of just find it weird. It's not that I think it's going to be bad. It's just that I just think it's going to be weird. It has potential for being bad just because Cibernetico's in the match. But again, this is also going to be another match that I would not be shocked if we see like those Vipers involved. Maybe a few other people get involved in the match just because that's kind of what AAA is all about. You know, they have interferences in their matches. The ninth match is probably the match that I think is going to attract what would be the certain fans, because it is Psycho Clown versus Kanek in the Ruleta de la Muerte mass tournament. You obviously have this kind of symbolizing El Toreo versus AAA, two different eras of Lucha Libre going head to head against each other. I think it's actually a pretty creative thing to do as far as a match. I think it probably would have worked maybe 10 years ago when Psycho Clown was kind of climbing up the ladder and Kanek was a little bit younger. Obviously, there's no real period of time where it could have actually, unless you did like in the 90s and it was Kanek versus somebody else. And they did do that. I mean, you did have a lot of Kanek versus like Cibernetico sort of deal within AAA back when, you know, Kanek was at least still a little bit more mobile than he is now. Now, I mean, this is going to be like, you're basically going up against Psycho Clown is what, late 30s, going up against Kanek, who's somewhere in his mid 70s. I don't know. That match sounds scary. But again, I think there's going to be a limitation to what they're going to do. Another match that could possibly include some interference. But for the most part, I think I kind of have a feeling that we're going to get a lot of the guys who probably should win end up losing in that tournament because they kind of want to make the matches come off a little better. I would be shocked if like to me, my guess is, if I had to guess, I would guess Pentagon Jr., Villano 4, or Alley Park. That's probably the one I would probably be a little bit more. I think Pentagon Jr., Villano 4, Blue Demon Jr., and Psycho Clown would probably be the four that would end up losing, just because you kind of want to have a better match towards as you advance to the final. I wouldn't be shocked if we ended up getting like Psycho Clown versus Villano 4 as the big mass match at the final Triplemania. Or, you know, but you know, you could also get something a lot worse. But that's kind of like my feeling that we're going to end up with Psycho Clown versus Villano 4 as the match, just because you're trying to build up your own guy. And this show, this show kind of feels more like it's more about the outside talent that's coming in. At some point, you kind of have to have like one match where it's like, we're going to build up our own guy. And obviously that would be I don't know. I mean, the losers advancing maybe they go winners advancing. Who knows? I would think it's losers advancing, which kind of makes it a little bit stranger to go to the final. But, you know, to me, that's the match that I wouldn't be shocked gets the most interest as far as a certain fan base. Then we get to the main event, which is the 10th match on the show, which is Hijo de Vikingo and Phoenix going up against the Young Bucks. This should be good. Certain fans aren't really big on this, the Young Bucks, this style of match. But I think if you're a AAA fan, I think you're pretty much already accustomed to this, and you might be a little bit more okay with this. I think the big concern for me is like whether or not Hijo de Vikingo and Phoenix will be available for that match, and how likely AAA is going to tell us that they'll be available, because Phoenix hasn't been around for a bit, and we don't know when he'll be back. He had it looked really bad. His arm injury on that AEW show it looked really bad. Maybe he does make it on time for this show, but Hijo de Vikingo, I'm guessing he should be okay by that point. It's a month away from now, so I could see him possibly being ready for that. I guess we'll know about Phoenix being his health probably this weekend, or in the upcoming days. But that said, this should be a great match. I don't know what the direction is with that, as far as, you know, maybe they're going to have, you know, the Young Bucks be champions. Maybe they win the AAA tag titles by that point in time from FTR and end up defending them against Hijo de Vikingo and Phoenix. Do you like go that direction? I don't know. I just kind of figure maybe they would have done something a little different, but, you know, I think it's going to be an excellent match. There's also the possibility, because they didn't announce a lot of guys on the show, that maybe if Phoenix or Hijo de Vikingo can't go, they have somebody else available to replace them. You know, they could always move up somebody from the card up to that match, and then, you know, the other guys that weren't listed could be on the other card, on the undercard. But it should be an interesting Triplemania 30th, the first chapter 1, or the first show. But I could totally understand, like, I think it's interesting as far as a show. I'm worried that the fact that they have 10 matches, and a lot of these matches are especially Copa Triplemania. That could go really long. This could be a really long show. I could see this being a way past. This could be somewhere in the 4-hour range, which is really scary as far as sitting through a wrestling show. I know there's a lot of people who actually don't mind doing that, but for me, myself personally, I mean, I'm perfectly fine with a 90-minute show. Like, I will be ecstatic with a 90-minute show. But that's not gonna be that. That's not gonna be Triplemania. But it should be interesting. I'd be curious to see what the lineup looks like the day of the event, just because, like I said, there's a lot of possibilities as far as guys who might not be ready, and then there's also some, because you're bringing in so many people outside of AAA, some people might back out. I'm trying to think if there's anything about AAA other than the injuries from Hijo de Kingo and Phoenix. I think that's about it from AAA. Pimpinella announced that he had left, but I think he's still going to end up showing up on AAA shows, he's probably just going to be working a lot more independent shows than he was previously that aren't affiliated with AAA. So we've already seen him with Robles Promotion. Robles Promotion at some point, like if Robles Promotion ever starts running like slightly more, they're starting to run more shows, but if they start like they have like something that at least like stream it online, then I think they're going to have to be a promotion that we might have to start talking about, just because I could see them lasting a little bit longer. For some reason, they've been able to pull off like bringing in talent from both CMLL and AAA, take talent away from those promotions. CMLL recently just celebrated their Dos Leyendas shows. Obviously, in Mexico City, they honor on all three events. They honor Salvador Lutarot, but in the Mexico City show, they honored Ringo Mendoza. In Puebla, they honored Dorel Dixon. And in Guadalajara, they honored Gran Cochis. All three deserving of being honored. Excellent. Like, if you go through history of CMLL, you see so much of what they contributed to the promotion as far as big matches. I think people don't like I think if obviously Dorel Dixon, all of them are from a different era, but really Ringo Mendoza might be the one that most of us that got into Lucha Libre more recently might be a little more familiar, because there's so much more footage of him available, and the fact that he was still kind of active like not too long ago. And I think there's also a lot of people who are like, Ringo Mendoza, he was a good mid-carder, but during the 70s and early 80s, he was a legitimate star for the promotion. One of the guys who pretty much was an EMLL, CMLL standard, kind of the Atlantis role. Dorel Dixon, different era, another huge star, really the first black wrestling star in Lucha Libre, really talented. One of those, great body. I mean, the guy looked like he was like made out of stone, just because the physique was so impressive. I mean, I remember like the first time I actually saw him was like on a Juarez Lucha show. They were airing Juarez Lucha on television, and he was doing an interview, and the guy looked exactly what he looked like more like from when he first started wrestling to right now, like when he did the Dos Leyendas appearance. I mean, the guy has not aged one bit. I mean, you see the little bit of him aging, but it's not that noticeable. Gran Cochis is probably the one that's most forgotten out of all of these guys, but he was a really, really good performer for EMLL during the mid to late 70s all the way through the early 80s. Really, like, he had that tag team with I think it was I'm trying to remember, I think it was Sangre India, or I'm trying to remember who it was, but that was a really good tag team that he was with, and also one of the top challengers to Satanico for the middleweight title, always one of the big threats to championships. So he was really like somebody that was a big star during that era, and later on became a trainer for a lot of names in the Guadalajara area. So one of the things that we've been seeing with Dos Leyendas, really the card itself, I kind of thought it was it was an okay card. They decided to crown new CMLL World Trios champions on the show. That was really one of the big attractions, along with the finals for where the women put up either the mask or hair, and then they actually, like, I think they realized that they didn't have this. The card wasn't really that strong, that they added a Negro Casas versus Templario match. one of the sad things about this was that leading up to this match, we had the announcement of the passing of Black Warrior Jr., who passed away at the age of 24. And so you had a lot of connections on this show to him. Obviously, he was supposed to be one of the depredadores for Volador Jr.'s faction, and never got the opportunity to do that. And then he's also related to the through marriage, he's related to the Casas family. So you had Negro Casas having to wrestle on the show. So you had a lot of and I'm sure a lot of these guys, because they're in such a, similar inner circle, that I'm sure a lot of them knew him well. Some just, and at the age of 24, to see somebody pass away so young, very sad. So, you had this card going on with that, and then, really you kind of felt like there was, I don't know, it just really seemed like, CMLL really didn't go make an effort to even mention that he had passed away or anything. So that was even worse. I think it was on the Thursday that he passed away. Actually, it was the Thursday prior to Dos Leyendas. It was really one of those, it just hit them really hard. And you have a lot of people on CMLL's roster who are so connected to that, to the situation and his passing. The opening match for the for the Dos Leyendas was Eléctrico, Halcón Suriano Jr. and Robin beating Cachorro, El Suicida, and Panterita del Ring Jr. I'm really kind of enjoying that they're putting a little more focus on the lightweight division. This is a division that really wasn't really, other than really Virus and Dragon Lee holding the titles, and then later on Kawato-san winning it. There really wasn't a lot of talk about this title, but it's kind of cool to see this title, because I kind of feel that this is the title that's the stepping stone for a lot of these guys to move up in weight class and to become welterweights. You see some of the younger guys kind of move up to that. Some guys don't really, gain weight, or they're just naturally smaller wrestlers, so they kind of stick to the lightweight division. But I think it's always been one of those fun divisions, just because that's really where guys like Negro Casas, Black Terry, Black Man, a lot of the guys from the early 80s, they started at that weight class and then eventually moved up to welterweight and then middleweight, and then obviously became stars on their own, as far as just from all the success that they had. So I'm kind of digging the fact that they're bringing that title and making it more prominent. Unfortunately, I kind of wish they would make it a little bit more, the champions. I think it's cool that they Panterita del Ring Jr. is somebody that I think should be higher on cards. Hopefully they realize that a little sooner rather than later, because he's really good. And he really should be working with a little bit more of a more prominent featured group, in matches against guys who are kind of a little bit better. It's funny because CMLL will do a main event, and they'll have Volador Jr. team up with Atlantis and Panterita del Ring, when they should really be doing Volador Jr. teaming up with Atlantis Jr. and Panterita del Ring Jr. That should be the main event trio, and they'd rather go with the opposite. And I think that's what's going to end up happening with Negro Casas now going Tecnico. And that was the other story on the show. Negro Casas beat Templario, and after the match, Negro Casas declared that he wanted to be a Tecnico going forward. I really dug that Negro Casas when he was asked why he was going Tecnico, he kind of explained that fans just don't boo him anyways. So to him, it made more sense to just be a Tecnico, since they're going to cheer him. And even the Rudo side's going to cheer Negro Casas, because he's a legend. He's kind of it's kind of in that Ric Flair type of role where no matter what he does, people are going to cheer him. So Casas decided, let me just do this. And I thought it was kind of cool that he kind of wants to work with some of the younger Rudos, something that he's done with the Tecnicos. Although I think it would have made sense for him to have stayed with the younger Tecnicos, but also he's 62 years old, and I think it's kind of getting to that point where maybe we don't want to see him doing Spanish flies off the top rope with somebody like Volador Jr. or even now the younger guys like Panterita del Ring Jr. or Suicida or guys like that. But I thought that was kind of cool, and I think I'm the only thing I'm kind of disappointed is that they should have had Templario beat Negro Casas, just because you're trying to build up Templario as the next big young Rudo that you have in the promotion. That was then followed by the Relevo Suicida Tag Team Final, as Marcela and La Metallica beat La Vaquerita and Reina Isis to send them into the mask versus hair match, which was Reina Isis beating La Vaquerita Reina Isis used a cool finisher to beat the La Vaquerita. I think it's a move that she said was in honor of her trainer, Arcángel de la Muerte. You know, for the most part, some of these matches, that's the one bad thing with CML is that they don't have somebody who can actually like kind of come up with like a more creative type of match. And I don't even know if you could actually do that with some of the talent that they have, just because, and not just the talent, but also the way they book the matches. Like if you're going to do a tournament match, I mean, tournaments, you're not really going to get if you're doing 5-6 minute sprint matches, it's like, you're not really expecting a lot from certain guys in what they're doing in those matches. Ringo Mendoza was then honored after that match. And then we were led to the CML World Trios title tournament, where Los Malditos del Ring ended up winning the titles as they beat Los Ingobernables in the semifinal. And then in the final, they beat Atlantis, Gran Guerrero, and Ultimo Guerrero, who also actually beat Los Infernales to advance to the final. One of the things that happened was that Atlantis Sr. replaced Atlantis Jr. No reason was given by CMLL. Nothing was mentioned other than he didn't appear. And Atlantis Jr., I don't think he has a lot of a strong social media presence where he hasn't been. I don't think anybody's mentioned what's wrong with him. I know when Soberano Jr. got hurt, there was really no. CML didn't mention it. Who ended up mentioning was Soberano Jr. maybe like a month or so later, where he was talking about how he was out with an injury, and he was the one that kind of brought it up and told the story. And for the most part, when wrestlers get hurt, it's not really the promotions that talk about them being injured. Like even AAA doesn't. Like Hijo de Kingo, when he got hurt, it was more Hijo de Kingo bringing it up. So I think there's a lot of concern with Atlantis Jr. if he's injured, what's going on. There's a lot of. And that's the bad thing is like CMLL probably should have said something just to calm down everything, but they haven't said anything. Hopefully he's okay, just because he's a very talented wrestler, and this kind of seems to have like killed off the whole, or not killed off, just silenced the whole Atlantis Jr. versus Stuka Jr. mask match. Now we're getting a lot of Atlantis Sr. versus Stuka Jr. Interaction and being booked in matches. I don't know if it would make sense to just switch over to Atlantis Jr. versus Stuka Jr. if there is something like if Atlantis Jr. is out with a serious injury. Just because I think while it might be a cool thing to see Atlantis win another title, another mask, I don't know if it's necessary. And it's really like, I think it would be more important for Atlantis Jr. to start making his own history, and this would be a good way to like build him up. So hopefully he's okay, and it's just something that he was hurt for a stretch of time, and he'll come back at some point. Who knows? I mean, or it could be even worse. I don't know. Like the way CMLL has been handling stuff. Like I think there's been people who have thought maybe he's left CMLL, which when people start thinking about that, then that's when you start worrying about whether or not. I don't think he left. I think he's probably hurt. I would be shocked like if he left, just because that would be like a huge, like that would be like a way of like CML has had some talent that has left that you kind of question, especially when Mystico left. I think that was really like the Mystico 2, who's now Trilistico. That kind of was a bit of a surprise, but even that wasn't that big of a deal. But for this, if Atlantis Jr. were to leave CMLL, because that's really where you're kind of not talking about it, it's going to have a lot of people kind of like insinuating that something's up with him. And so I kind of think they should have just said something. And I think that kind of threw off a lot of what their plans were, because I think the girls del Infierno, or girls del Atlántida, that was the plan, to have them win the titles, to build up Atlantis Jr. and, keep building him up against Stuka Jr. And them not winning, and them going instead with Los Malditos of Sagrado and Gemelos Diablo 1 and 2. Seemed to be like a completely different thing to go with. Obviously, they could have gone with Los Infernales, but Los Infernales, 2 of them already have titles, so made more sense. Also, the fact that they're doing this CMLL Universal Tournament in April made more sense to have more options as far as champions going on, which we will talk about in a bit. But hopefully Atlantis Jr. is going to be okay, because I don't know if I could handle Atlantis teaming up with Ultimo Guerrero and Gran Guerrero. It's not the same. Atlantis can't go at the rate that his son is going right now. The main event was Averno and Mystico beating TJP and Volador Jr. in a Relevos Increíbles match. This was probably the best match on the show, so which shouldn't surprise anybody. But to be fair, this show just was like Dos Leyendas. It's just, I don't know, like it's just there's just it's not necessarily the show, but it's like the way CMLL is coming up with their lineups. It's just, I don't know, it's not like they don't have talent to like come up with a really strong show. And you could even have some of these like questionable matchups. But if you're able to give, like if you're doing a 5 or 6 match card and you can't pull off 2 or 3 good matches, I don't know. I mean, especially with the roster at CML House, even with the talent that they've had leave, it really surprises me that they're not able to pull that off. Not that they were even doing that when all that talent was there, because like even the last, prior to the pandemic, we're already starting to see a lot of the decline in match quality on CMLL shows. Other news from CMLL: Hechicero retained the CMLL World Heavyweight title against Gran Guerrero in Arena Coliseo on March 19th. CML has been trying to fill out all their titles and also trying to feature more title matches on shows. That's something we're seeing a lot more frequently. For a long stretch of time, we weren't really seeing a lot of title matches. Now, for whatever reason, I think at least once or twice every week, we're seeing at least one title match or like one match that's leading up to a title match for the following week. So at least we're kind of getting that. But the problem is there's so many titles in CMLL that it's kind of hard to like keep up with them and really think that they're that big of a deal. The other big thing going on on the weekend shows was there was a Cranio versus Volcano feud in Arena Coliseo. That's been going on. Surprised they kept that in Coliseo, but to be honest, I think that's something I think that's kind of cool that they're kind of trying to add something to the other shows that maybe isn't happening on other shows. You would think they would do that more often. I hope this is something that they're going to trend towards. But I also think they probably should start streaming all this. Like, to me, it would be so much cooler if like CML streamed all their shows and gave you the option to watch all these shows on a streaming platform of any type, either it be a subscription based on YouTube or something else. Not something where you have to watch it live and then can't watch it later on. But like, I don't know, like, I feel like it's something that CML should look into. I think there's some stuff like even like the weekend shows, like some of the lineups don't like interest me, but there's always like maybe 1 or 2 matches. Like this past they had a recent Tuesday show where I actually watched the half of the show just because they were doing the tournament to crown the new CML Super Lightweight champion, and they also did a Chamuel defending the CML Micro Estrellas title against Gemelo Diablo 1. So I thought that was very interesting. To me, anything that involves like lightweight wrestlers is always going to be something that interests me, just because there's a chance that it's going to be good. This wasn't that great, but I mean, it was strong enough it was good enough where I was entertained. I was a little disappointed in the result that Stigma ended up winning the title when, you have Halcon Soriano Jr., Suicida, and the Guadalajara guys, the guys that came in from Guadalajara were pretty good. And Asturiano. You have those guys who are far more flashier, and you end up giving it to Stigma, who isn't bad, but he's very generic as far as the technical goes. I would actually turn Stigma heel, but one of the things that we're also seeing with CML is that they're kind of trying to blur the line between Rudos and Technicos for the most part. So you're getting a lot of matches where it's like Rudos versus, Technicos versus Technicos, where one of the Rudos teams is being more Rudo, acting more Rudo than the other ones. I just thought we should run down with the Universal Tournament coming up. Let's give a rundown on who are the current CMLL champions. Some of these guys aren't going to be involved in the Universal Tournament, obviously, because they're not, they're not going to add the women, they're not going to add the micros, and they're not going to add the minis. So you could scratch them out. The current CML Micro Estrellas champion, of course, is Chamuel. The minis champion is Mercurio, who recently won the title from Shockercito. I'll just go through the non-Universal Tournament possibilities. The women, as far as the women go, you have the CML World Women's Champion, Princesa Suhei, the National women's champion Dark Silhouette, although she's going to be defending her title soon and could possibly drop it. The national women's tag team champions are La Jarochita and Lluvia, and those are your women's champions. And then you have all the regular size male, the weight class. They vary in weight classes from heavyweight, light heavyweight, middleweight, welterweight, lightweight. So you have a lot of light heavyweight. I think I mentioned that. So you have a lot of different weight classes. You of course have the CML champions, the World Historic Champions, which, they've actually dropped the NWA for the time being, which is really silly to me. To me, those titles are probably the ones I would probably combine with some other titles, with the CML titles, just because I think you're going to be constantly having issues with the NWA name, and you're running the threat of a possible lawsuit at some point, which, obviously it's not that big of a deal, but, to me, it'd be kind of cool just to like have one guy be the CML World and Historic welterweight champion, and then you have the national titles kind of be the number one contenders to the world titles instead of just this whole thing. But you have, as far as the CML World Super Lightweight Champion, you have Stigma, the CML World Welterweight Champion Titan, the CML World Middleweight Champion Soberano Jr. He actually vacated the national welterweight title, so that is the one title that is still vacant, along with the Arena Coliseo tag team titles, which will be crowned this upcoming Saturday. But I think that's the next big tournament we're going to get, is a national welterweight championship tournament. I would expect it to happen sometime in April or May, just because it kind of seems like they're kind of in a run of crowning new champions, and I think that would be something that they probably want to fill out before there's any issues with that title. The CML World Light Heavyweight Champion is Niebla Roja. The CML World Heavyweight Champion is Hechicero. The CML World Tag Team Champions, the Chavez brothers, Angel de Oro and Niebla Roja. The CML World Trios Champions are the recently crowned El Sagrado and Gemelos Diablo. The NWA World Historic Welterweight Champion is Volador Jr. The World Historic Middleweight Champion is Mystico. And the World Historic Light Heavyweight Champion is Duca Jr. Now we get to the national titles. Controversy over the years with these titles. I didn't even mention the national tag team champ. Well, I'll mention it right now. So the national lightweight champion is Panterita del Ring Jr. The welterweight title, of course, is currently vacant, as I said. The national middleweight champion is Templario. The national light heavyweight champion is Angel de Oro. And the national heavyweight champion is Euphoria. Then we have the national tag team champions, Esfinge and Fugaz, who just won those titles from Polvora and Felino Jr. And the national trios champions are Virus, Cancerbero, and Raziel. Raziel is currently out with an injury. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if those titles get vacated and there's a new tournament for those titles as well at some point within the next few months. Maybe they wait out. Maybe Raziel isn't that. Maybe Raziel comes back sooner. The Arena Coliseo tag team titles will be determined this upcoming Saturday with a tag match between Akuma and Espanto Jr. versus Hombre Bala Jr. and Robin. Like I said, that's kind of cool that they're doing something different with Arena Coliseo, giving some of the other guys a chance to like headline those shows or work higher on cards on those shows or get titles. I think that's something that they should really consider doing. Like it should be more like certain guys should be focused on there and maybe never be on a Friday show. Not that they shouldn't be on a Friday show, but maybe not so frequently. Like, is it wrong like to not have, maybe just have Inquisidor, certain guys exiled to the Sunday or Saturday shows or the Tuesday shows, and then like maybe focus more, like have a certain focus on the Friday shows, maybe every once in a while have one of the other guys on that show. I think that's something that they should really consider. Something they used to do in the past, like you didn't automatically get put into a Friday show in EMLL back in the day. You kind of had to work your way up by working the Sunday and Tuesday shows and maybe some of the Guadalajara and Puebla shows. Then you would eventually make it to the big Friday shows and be part of those shows. Maybe not be on every show, but you would be one of those guys who's kind of in a rotation under, as part of that the bigger show of the week. So it'd be interesting to see what the Universal tournament will look like. Oddly enough, Ultimo Guerrero isn't scheduled to be on this, which is why I wouldn't be surprised if they try to get a title on him at some point. It's interesting, like even Gran Guerrero isn't on this. So I think that was the plan, to get That's why I think they were trying to get, because it would have been like if they would have gone with the Guerreros Laguneros or Guerreros de la Atlantida and they won the CMLL World Trios titles, then you could have had like, Atlantis Jr. would have had a title, and you could have had him facing Stuka Jr. at some point in the Universal Tournament to like kind of keep building up their issues. So that's gonna be interesting to see what they do as far as who's gonna be in the Universal Tournament, who ends up winning. Odds are Volador Jr. If you're gonna Volador Jr. has usually if you're gonna make an odds type of thing, Volador Jr. should be placed high just because he's usually the one. If it's not Volador Jr., it's Ultimaguro that usually ends up winning one of these tournaments. Although I wouldn't be shocked if he didn't this time around. It's also interesting that there's like a very different mix of guys on this show. Should be interesting to see what that Universal Tournament looks like and what the final will be on that. Other news, Cinta de Oro 2. I always call them 2 because to me, there is only one Cinta de Oro, and that is the one that was in Juarez during my childhood back in the 80s. This one, of course, being the former Sin Cara, now wrestling at Cinta de Oro. He won the Crash Heavyweight title on March 18th. A few days later, Hijo de Kingo met him to hand him the title belt, which I thought was pretty funny. They actually took a picture together with him giving him the title, which it's gonna, like, as everybody, like, I think Rob Viper made a joke about how this will probably end up happening again within another month when Cinta de Oro has to hand the title back to Hijo de Kingo, because you always know there's always a possibility that there's either going to be an issue with Cinta de Oro and the Crash, or there's going to be a reunion with Conan and AAA with the Crash, and then Hijo de Kingo comes back to work the Crash shows. So that's actually something that I found amusing. The other news was also big news was Dark Angel will be making her in-ring return on some of the upcoming Robles promotion shows in Mexico. She actually posted a video of her announcing her return on her YouTube channel, and she started training. I think she's been back for at least the last few days in Mexico. I think she said she was going to be there preparing for 6 weeks, so she's probably been back for about a week and a half, preparing, training to get back in shape, back into wrestling shape. I don't mean just back into wrestling shape, so she's able to work it. I don't know if she was asked why she chose to make her return with the Robles promotion. Surprised she didn't get offered to work CMLL shows, but I think right now Robles is probably offering a little bit more money than CMLL would just to work a random show or a random weekend shows. It would have been cool, like, if they could have talked her into coming back just for a weekend, a big return. But I'm sure possibilities that could happen down the road. But her coming back with Robles, there's a lot of like ex-AAA, ex-CMLL, ex-AAA talent that's working for Robles, and even like people who were gone for maybe a few years are just making their way back. You had Marco Corleone make his return to wrestling on some of those shows. So should be interesting to see what she looks like in the ring, because she's been gone for a while, and I don't think she's gonna be that bad, just because even if she is, I mean, it's not like there's far worse wrestlers in Mexico right now, so it's like it's not even going to be like it's just going to be something that people are just going to look at it and be like, okay, she made her return. I think the big thing is, like, if she looks good and performs well, whether or not she's going to get the wrestling bug back and want to go back to working full time, or if she's if she's going to get some interest from other independent promoters in Mexico as well as outside of Mexico. Is she going to become, start, getting a little bit of a interest in her coming back to wrestle? That's something that I'm interested to see what happens with that. But that's pretty much what I always expect with, like, people coming back, like, whenever they're gone for a bit, and then you're like, oh, I wonder if they're going to get a lot of interest, where they'll show up, what they'll do. I wouldn't be shocked if she actually makes her way back to CMLL at some point just to make an appearance. That's it for this week's podcast. We will be back again soon. Don't know when. I think Kurt will probably be back on a show, just because he's been texting and calling me and telling me he wants to do another podcast. Unfortunately, when Kurt says he wants to do another podcast, that could be anywhere from days, weeks, months, who knows when. But if he doesn't make it, I'll probably do another podcast soon, probably sometime before the Triplemania show, or maybe even after. But yeah, definitely check out LuchaWorld.com for the latest news. Also, check out my retro wrestling review site, retrowrestling.com. We're also on Patreon at patreon.com/LuchaWorld. Also on YouTube. If you're not listening to the show on YouTube, you could find this podcast and other show reviews and possibly other podcasts and other content on our YouTube channel, Retro Wrestling, the Retro Wrestling YouTube channel. Check that out. Subscribe, like. Yeah, that's about it for this week. So we'll be back again soon. Take care, everyone.